The hum of the airplane's engines was constant, a low drone that filled the cabin with an almost soothing, monotonous sound. Yet, amid the usual turbulence of a crowded flight, something unexpected was about to happen. A moment that would shift the mood in the cabin and leave everyone silently reflecting. "Excuse me, ma'am," came a voice from the aisle. Julia, who had been quietly staring out of the window, turned to find a man standing in front of her, his face flushed, his eyes focused not on her but on the empty seat next to her. His voice was polite, but there was an underlying tension, the kind you feel when someone believes they are entitled to something. "I'm sorry, but my son's seat is over there, and he's upset because he can't sit next to me. Could you move, please?" The man's request was abrupt, the words clipped, though his tone was civil enough. Julia blinked for a moment, the suddenness of the request throwing her off balance. She had been quietly seated, minding her own business, as she had done for the past few hours of the flight. She wasn't used to being spoken to like this. She glanced down at the young boy by the window across from her. He was looking at her, his eyes wide, clearly nervous but not exactly hostile. "I'm sorry," Julia said, her voice soft but firm. "I'm quite comfortable here. I've been sitting here for a while now, and I'm sure your son will be fine sitting across from me." The man's face tightened, his patience wearing thin. "I understand, but it's a long flight, and he's really upset about this. Can't you just move over a row? It'll only be a moment." The words stung, but Julia, who had spent much of her life navigating similar situations, took a deep breath. She didn't want to escalate things, didn't want to be the subject of yet another uncomfortable confrontation. But as she gathered her thoughts, the situation became clearer. This wasn't about a seat. This wasn't about the young boy needing to sit with his father. This was about something deeper, something more insidious, an assumption that simply by virtue of her skin color she would comply. That because she was black, she was somehow less deserving of space. Julia stood up slowly, her movements deliberate. Her hands tightened around the armrests as she steadied herself, drawing strength from a deep reservoir she had built over the years. "You're right," she said, with a slight but purposeful smile. "I'm sure he's upset. But you see, I'm not going anywhere. I've had my own challenges today, just like you. And I'm sure there's a way we can both be comfortable without either of us losing out." At that moment, the flight attendant, a woman named Maria, stepped up. She had been watching the interaction quietly from a distance, but now she stepped in without hesitation. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice unwavering. "We are all passengers on this flight, and this woman has every right to sit here as anyone else. If your son is upset, I'm sure we can find a better solution than asking her to move. This is a shared space. We all deserve respect." The man hesitated for a moment, his face reddening. The confrontation had escalated far beyond his expectations. He had assumed that his request would be met with immediate compliance, that his frustration would somehow take precedence. But Maria's words had thrown him off balance. He looked at her, then at Julia, and for a moment, something in his demeanor shifted. Perhaps it was shame. Perhaps it was just the realization that he had misjudged the situation. Without another word, he turned, muttering under his breath, and walked back to his son. Julia watched him go, her heart still racing, but a sense of relief washing over her. She hadn't given in. She hadn't let the weight of his assumptions crush her. And more importantly, she wasn't alone. Maria had stepped in for her, had done what was right when it mattered. A silence filled the cabin for a brief moment, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was a quiet acknowledgement of what had just happened. The kind of moment where people, strangers, came together, silently agreeing that kindness, dignity, and respect should always take precedence over entitlement. As Julia sat back down, she couldn't help but glance over at the young boy. His eyes were still wide, but now there was a different look in them. A a sense of wonder, maybe, or even a bit of admiration. He had just witnessed something he may not fully understand, but he had seen, perhaps for the first time, the power of standing up for yourself, for others. Maria returned to her duties, but not before offering Julia a small, knowing smile. "You okay?" Julia nodded. "Yeah, I think I'm better than okay." As the plane continued its journey, the atmosphere shifted. The tension that had been hanging in the air moments before was gone, replaced by something lighter, something hopeful. In that brief exchange, an act of kindness had shattered a barrier. A flight that had been full of uncertainty and tension now carried with it an unspoken understanding, a reminder that kindness could transform, even in the most unexpected of places. As the plane descended into the bright, bustling city below, Julia couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of hope. She had always believed in kindness, in the power of doing what's right, even when it seemed impossible. And today, that belief had been reaffirmed. But the story didn't end there. The ripple effect of her encounter with the man and the flight attendant had started to unfold, quietly but surely. People began to speak up more, both on and off the flight, sharing stories of their own acts of kindness, of moments when standing up for others made a difference. Julia knew that this was just one story among many, but it was a story that needed to be told, a story that would remind people, wherever they were, that kindness could change the world, one moment at a time. And maybe, just maybe, that little boy, who had watched from across the aisle, would one day grow up to be the kind of person who, when faced with a choice, would choose kindness, just as Maria had. The kind of person who would never forget that, in a world full of noise and chaos, a single act of kindness could stop everything in its tracks.